Welcome to the What I Wish I Knew After Pregnancy Loss podcast. I am your host, Sharna Southan. I am an angel mum, a rainbow mum, a pregnancy loss practitioner, and trauma-informed coach. I created the Institute of Healing Through Pregnancy Loss out of my own experience with loss in the hopes to provide understanding and healing, educating people on pregnancy loss, and creating more women or men in trained support roles. In this podcast, I hope to shed light on what I wish I knew in relation to pregnancy loss, opening up the conversation, breaking the stigma, and bringing real life stories plus guest experts. Thank you for being here with me today, and let's dive into today's episode. Hello, beautiful souls. Today's episode is a part 1 of a part 2 series. So I hope you enjoy listening into part 1 and make sure that you do listen into part 2 when it becomes available as well. Now let's dive in. Welcome, beautiful souls, to the What I Wish I Knew After Pregnancy Loss podcast. Today I have with me Lindsey Paulson. Sorry, did I just say that right?
You did, yes,
I
correct.
didn't even check with you first.
That's okay.
Um, Lindsey is the founder of LP Consulting and host of the Mess to Mission podcast. She began her operational career with Marriott International in 2012 and works within the consulting world to help small businesses and nonprofits implement strategy to create administrative and operational processes. When she isn't working alongside CEOs to automate, delegate, and elevate their business, she is prioritizing mental health discussions for small business owners to ensure that they can take a mess to a mission and build their business around their life, not their life around their business. Thank you so much for joining us, Lindsey.
Yes, thank you for having me.
You're so welcome. So you do have a little bit of a story to share for yourself. So do you want to tell us a little bit about you and, your experiences that you've gone through?
Yeah, so like you said, my name is Lindsey Paulson, and I am a mother of three. So I have a 12-year-old, a 7-year-old, and a 4-year-old. But one thing that unfortunately we did run into with, all the life and all of the mom activities is multiple losses. So in total, when you go to the doctor and they're like, "How many times have you been pregnant?" So I've been pregnant 8 times in total, and we have 3 kids. So we've had 5 losses thus far. So it really has been an emotional roller coaster, kind of up and down, just trying to navigate that because it's not something that people really talk about where I am or just really anywhere. It's kind of like this stigma that hides, or people feel ashamed, and there's a lot of processing and grieving that goes on with each individual loss. So I have experienced 5 total, with my most recent one actually being Thanksgiving Day of 2024. So we're still actually fresh in this whole grieving process and kind of healing and coping, but to say I'm a stranger to it, unfortunately, I am not. So basically, it all started kind of around 2017. In between my middle child and my third child, I had two, and then actually was able to have the third child, and then we have had the rest since then. So I think now we're in that journey where I've healed and we've grieved and we've done all these things. We're kind of hanging up the hat. Um, it goes back and forth each day, though. It goes back and forth on whether we want to be finally done or not finally done. But we actually had a little girl that was planning to come in Thanksgiving, and we experienced a very unexpected loss. And so now, with it being February, I've always been open about sharing, but this one is still it's a lot more fresh from where I've normally been and shared with in the past. So it has been, shout out to my therapist. It has been a long, winding journey for her, for myself, and kind of even now our kids, because this one, they knew that they had a baby sister coming. They were old enough to understand, comprehend, they were excited. And that was just an additional layer, I think, on top of everything else with coping, is having to tell them about baby sister, get them really excited. We had a name picked out. We went out for family dinner and then come back and untell them in a way. So on top of that, they don't process things like we do, so they continue to ask questions afterwards, which has made the grieving process just a little bit harder this time, just because they're like, "Oh, did you get Sophia this or did you get Sophia that?" And you have to constantly kind of remind them, like, "Hey, unfortunately, remember, Sophia got sick. She's no longer going to be with us." And just having to constantly talk about and remind toddlers and baby children about the situation has just been a little bit harder than the last time. But I've unfortunately, the first miscarriage I have was when I call it green to the grieving world and green to the miscarriage world. So that was the one where I actually opted to take the medicine and pass everything natural. So that was low key traumatic. And if nobody has ever told you that before, 0 out of 10 recommend, because I was not prepared for just everything that kind of went with that, sight wise, pain wise, gore wise, that whole experience. And then the other ones, unfortunately, I've experienced having a DNC, and that has gotten increasingly harder with on my body with just scar tissue and kind of navigating that outcome. So really now we're down to the fact of if I have to have an additional surgery, how will my body respond? What will happen scar tissue wise? And kind of navigating that new norm, I guess.
Wow, there's so much in your story, and it's similar to my experience. The miscarriage, my first one, happened in my first pregnancy. So, and again, it's like something that you think, I'm just going to fall pregnant and I'm going to have a baby. That's it. Like nothing else is going to happen. And then it does. And similar to yourself, I mean, I didn't take the medication, but it was a very traumatic experience being told just go home and your body will
Mhm.
pass, your body will do it. My body, and I ended up bleeding a hell of a lot, ended up having to go in for a DNC anyway. A very traumatic experience. And then on top of that, as you've progressed through your losses, you've had to then figure out ways, like change. We've got to shift the way that we talk about what we're going through when you're trying to tell children, because like I said,
Yeah.
they don't process things the way that we do. They need things said to them in a real matter of fact way so that they can understand that they're not actually, going to have their baby sister or whatever at home with them. So it adds another layer, a completely different and unexpected layer on top of your grieving. You said that you feel like you've been able to process all of the losses because you went through so many. How, for me, just going through one, it was a very difficult process because again, there's no rule book. There's no, you're not given the thing and go, okay, step by step, this is what's going to happen and this is the process. And you just kind of left, flailing, going, I have no idea how to get through this. And because you went through that multiple times, how did you feel like you were able to navigate that and feel like you were able to process the one before it compounding into the next? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, I can tell you my version and then I can tell you my therapist version if that helps you at all. So my version of it is for I dealt with it, and I say dealt in air quotes. So like 2 through 4, I dealt with it. Really not until number 5, I realized that I just didn't cope. I just said, okay, moving on. I didn't talk about it. I didn't write about it. I didn't dive into any sort of research on it. I just said, okay, it is what it is. We're not going to talk about it. We're going to keep going. And went back to life as normal because unfortunately fortunately, because I am blessed with the kids that I have, but they still have school, they still have activity. So being busy was my coping mechanism as far as, okay, well, I'm just going to jump back into life. I'm going to do all of these things and I don't have time to process any of this grief, and my kids don't have time for me to cry or be in the bed or any of these things because I still had day-to-day activities. We still had travel soccer, we still had gymnastics and dance and all of these other things going on. It wasn't until probably Well, I know it wasn't until number five, this most recent one, that I took all of that anguish and really dove into my therapy sessions. It's even been a little bit more traumatic because one thing about this story with this last one is we were actually traveling. So we were on travel for Thanksgiving. We weren't in our home state. We were going through all of these different like Thanksgiving activities with family. And I just knew in my body and my heart that when I was in the car, because it's a 9 hour drive where we were going, that it was happening. On top of that, with the latest politics that are going on, unfortunately, the first hospital that we were going to, they don't do DNCs, even if you're bleeding, because they don't do abortions, they don't do women's care, they don't believe in that because it was a religious hospital. So they basically turned us away, saying, even though I was, actively pregnant, actively bleeding, and you hear about all of those things in politics and on the TV, and you think, oh gosh, that'll never happen to me. Well, going through that was even more eye-opening and scary for this last one. And I really think that's when it set in that and has kind of made me hesitant for opening up my heart to doing it again because the world is such a scary place right now with rules and politics and hospitalizations and all of those different crossing your T's and dotting your I's. So now is as good a time as ever to sit down and process through therapy. And I don't really think that I dealt with the first ones. I think that I bottled it up and said, okay, here's a box, deal with this later. Life's got to go on. My friends need me, my parents need me, my husband needs me, my kids needs me, all these people can need me, and I can serve them better if I'm just not thinking about it. Pro tip, don't do that. It's not a great idea. It's not healthy. It is not 0 out of 10 recommend. And actually, it really unraveled. Just last weekend, I went to a wellness fair in our local community, and somebody came up and congratulated me because they had heard that I was pregnant. I didn't realize just like the vigorous trauma response and anxiety that that was going to elicit in me because she came up and she was so genuine. She did not mean anything by it, but she was like, oh my gosh, I heard through so and so that you're pregnant. Congratulations. And I panicked. Like I went into fight or flight. I went into trauma. I didn't know how to tell her in a group of people. So I just said, no. And then I walked off awkwardly, got in the car and drove away and called my therapist and was like, I am unwell. Like, there's a lot here that I have not dealt with over the years that I need you to force me to talk about because I'm not going to choose to talk about it otherwise. Now, I have done some podcast about just miscarriages and grief and all of that and talked about it a little bit, but probably not to the amount now that I should. But I can honestly say I probably haven't finished processing each loss. And that is something that I will admit I'm still fresh in that situation to do.
And it's very, very easy to not want to see that, not want to witness it, because it's a pain that we don't necessarily know how to process and cope with. It wasn't until I spoke to my therapist, and I think that's the other thing too. Like we need to normalize being able to go to see a psychologist, a therapist, someone for your mental health so that you can help process it. Not to say it's the one and only thing that's going to be the answer for you, but it is a piece of that healing puzzle. And it was a piece for me as well. And it was only in hearing her say what you experienced was trauma that it validated my experience. And I was like, oh my gosh, the way that I was showing up, all of the things that I was doing was completely normal, but I thought I was making everything up. And that's the thing too, like what you said with, I want you to force me to talk about these things because when you sit down in front of them and they're like, so what's been happening? That's not like, you're not going to willingly come forward with all of this stuff that's been happening. So just like, well, yeah, so it's been great. But you still, even though you're going to see a therapist, you're like, I need to open up, but it's still so hard.
It is so hard. And I think that it's one of those things about therapy. So, okay, you show up, you're having the best day. Your appointment is scheduled on the best day of your life. And you're like, I've had a great day, all these things. I'm like, how are you? Well, I'm having a great day. I don't want to open up that trauma bucket and just like start crying. Like, come on, Christine. Like, I got things to do today. Like, I wore mascara here, my hair's done. I don't want to dive into that. And she does a really good job of helping me like process in the levels that I need to process. But I mean, it's scary, and I think that normalizing mental health is so big, and that's something that I'm super passionate about because the way that I process the loss is going to be completely different from the way that you process the loss. And then when I started talking about it, my friend had one and she started talking about it. And then I had another friend who had one. But those people texted me because I had brought it up first in conversation. And I think it made that level of comfortability a little bit easier. I did a podcast on things I wish I had known about miscarriage prior to having one. That was one of my first times that I really opened up and kind of said, like, these are the five things that I wish somebody would have said. Like, the medicine is when it's mandatory to take the medicine, like, buckle up, because nobody I had known had done that or talked about it or said, this is going to be hella traumatic and you are going to see things visually that you cannot unsee. That would have been a good spoiler alert to have, or walking in to get a DNC and every nurse and every doctor's like, "Oh, you're here for an abortion. Oh, you're here for an abortion." And I'm like, "But I'm not. I am, but I'm not." Like, "Yes, cool, insurance, got it. Code it however you want, but this was a baby that I wanted and now I'm here grieving." And even my OBGYN on, I think it was like my third or fourth one, she looked me in the eyes before I went back there and she said, "Are you ready?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm good." And she's like, "You've not cried." And I said, "What do you mean?" And she's like, "You've not cried. I've not seen you cry one time about this situation." Okay, Tracy, like, let's not open the floodgates. But then as soon as she said it, I burst into tears and she's like letting me sit there and process and cope. And I'm crying about it in the hospital bed, like ready to go back crying. And so I'm like, okay, well, thanks for that. But I think she knew that I needed to have that emotion because was just so cold and shut off. And it's been different with every single one. But I just remember vividly her looking at me and being like, you're not good. And I know if my OBGYN can tell me that I'm not good, the rest of the people in my life, I don't hang out with her like for fun. So I know that my husband and my kids and all of them can see that this is like a huge triggered moment for me, but sometimes it was so easy to just shut off and be like, yeah, I'm good. I'm good. Like, I don't want to bother or bog down anyone else with my emotions.
And it's so, I think because we sense that from society, we're like, okay, well, we don't necessarily want to burden anyone else with what we're feeling internally. And I think with miscarriage and like pregnancy loss, no matter how far along you are, you almost are made feel like it's not a big deal because, it's just like your baby wasn't sort of on the outside. You hadn't given birth. So then you feel like inadvertently, like you're just like, okay, cool, I'll just deal with this on the inside. And it's not until obviously there's people that you spend time with. And your OBGYN was probably one of those that you're just like, okay, you spent enough time with so that they could start to sense who you were as a person. And sometimes it takes those people to really see through the mask that we're putting on just to show up for everyone else. And she obviously could see that in that moment, you needed that little bit of extra support and reassurance in a way that if you do need to go through that emotion right now, I'm here for you. I think too, sometimes that can help mitigate the trauma that we experience because you have someone on the other side of you that is showing you that sense of support as opposed to someone on the other side of you like what I had in heading into my DNC telling me that just give it some time and you can try again. And I'm like, awesome. Do you even know why I'm going in for the surgery? Like I'm like right
Yeah,
in the middle of
super helpful. Thanks
yeah,
so much.
like,
Really love that feedback. Yeah,
yeah.
you can have other okie doke. Like, that makes it way better. That's my favorite thing. I have a very strong personality, so when people say things like that to me, I'm like, oh, in through your nose, out through your mouth, like big deep breath. Like, I know. And if it's a man, it intensifies by like 1,000. I'm like, okay, thanks, Jerry. We'll catch you on the flip side. Like, do your job and let's keep it pushing. There was actually a my friend who, and I told this story on my podcast too. She had a DNC, unfortunately, and she had one of the male doctors who came up, and she was so nervous that she was just vomiting nonstop. Her nerves were shot. She was in a horrible position, and he looked at her and he said, "Well, the good news is that after this DNC, you won't be puking anymore." Oh, zero things that you should tell a woman in crisis and or who is about to go have a DNC. Like, let's have a little empathy and self-awareness. And I understand that in the medical community, you can get desensitized. Let's not. Let's work a little bit harder on that because I told her, had that been me, I would have gone two sheets to crazy. Like I would have been hollering and scream like he would have not been well. Because I had hyperemesis, so I threw up all even with my current children, like from the time I would wake up till the time I would go to bed, I would puke. So saying someone this will end after you're not pregnant anymore, like maybe not the best response. And I just have to constantly tell myself and remind myself that one of the things I wish I had thought about is doctors are humans. They don't have any superpower. They put their pants on the same way that I do of a day. They can get it wrong. They can get it wrong. They can make mistakes. They can say things that you're thinking are, oh my goodness, outlandish, but they're humans. And not to say that, we've all interacted with someone in our life that you're like, oof, you might not be my cup of tea. You can run into those people when you're in trauma, and how you react to them is telling. And even on the flip side, if you're in the medical profession and someone is going through that, how you speak to them, it matters. It matters how you talk to them in that moment. It matters what words you use, how you hold yourself. Nothing would run through me more than the puppy dog face. When people would look at me with just sheer sad eyes, it made me so mad. And I don't know why, but I'm sitting here thinking, I'm not broken. Stop looking at me like that. I'm in here for a surgery just like anybody else. But at the same time, it would make me angry. And that was something that I had to learn to process because when people would find out, they would almost give me that like sad, empathetic face. And I'd be like, we're not going to you can be sad for me, but this isn't my whole entire identity. I'm not going to allow myself to be consumed and identified with this trauma, this miscarriage, this grief, because that's not who I am. At the end of the day, there's so many more multifaceted layers to who I am as a human, and this is one part. And it's a horrible, not great, tragic part of things that happened, but it's not my entire life. This is a piece that I wish had to navigate differently, and one day maybe it will all be said and done, but just there's so many things that you can experience. And actually, my son, they thought he was a miscarriage. And I've had 1,000 of these, so I felt very confident that they were wrong. And he was scheduled for a DNC. And then I said, nope, this one feels different. This one feels different in my body. I know what miscarriage feels like. Went back and they found his heartbeat and canceled the DNC. Doctors can make mistakes. And had I just gone with that whim, I wouldn't have this 4-year-old Spider-Man terror that runs around and breaks all my stuff all the time. And he's sweet as can be and he's cute as a button, but Lord, he's a lot. So these are the things that I constantly think about is trusting yourself and knowing that at the end of the day, it's something that you can navigate through and get through in its entirety.
I love how you said it's not your identity because I feel like when people find out about these challenges, these experiences that we've gone through, they do then start to see you in a completely different, through a different lens. And you're like, but this isn't now all of me. It is yeah, it's just one part of my story. And I can get through this and I can, grow through this. I can heal through this. But there is so many different other elements to me that make me me. It's not this one experience that's just going to overshadow me for the rest of my life. And I think it's also up to the woman too to understand that it's not her identity, because with so many things coming at them from external world, it can start to make them believe that that is their identity, and their loss is then what they're going to move forward with for the rest of their life. But there's so much more beauty on the other side of it when you choose to heal through what you've gone through. And I just also think it's incredible that your son now could have been, may not have been here. He could have been one of those D&C appointments. And I'm baffled that, and again, it goes back to really advocating for yourself, because yes, the medical system can get it wrong. It's not to say that, they're always wrong. It's just in certain moments, like you said, they're human. Things can get missed. Sometimes they can get it wrong. And really, if you feel so strongly about something for yourself, advocate for that. Speak up and say something. If it is part of the pregnancy, or if it is in your healing journey and something's not right. Like for example, I should have spoken up when I was bleeding so much, and I'm like, this isn't right. But I kind of just went along with the process because I thought the GP's like, it's just going to be like a heavy period. I'm like, well, maybe this is a heavy period. I have no idea. Maybe my heavy is a completely different definition, to the point where I was passing out. So, I was losing so much blood that I was passing out and I couldn't even stand up. And I rang my mum and I told her I was going to die. So there are certain parts of us where we know something's not right, and we need to be able to really trust that instinct and speak up and say something. And I'm so glad that you did, because you have your beautiful 4-year-old. At what part of the pregnancy, gestation wise, how far were you along when they were going through all of that?
For him specifically, it was, I think we were at like 14 weeks ish. And we went in and they had said there was no heartbeat. Not shocked news by that before, but it just felt different. Like it just felt different. And I remember, I think it was my husband who said, like, we need to go back and double check. Schedule it if you want, but let's wait 2 more weeks and then we will go back and double check. And I felt very strongly like I don't feel the same way I felt in the past, and I don't know how to even describe the feeling. It was just kind of like the gut feeling and relying on your intuition. But the more that I've thought about it and processed it for him specifically later on, why are we as women so afraid to ask questions or push back? Is it because we're afraid that we're going to be seen as combative, or is it because we're afraid to speak up and advocate for ourselves? I might not see this doctor ever again. I don't know him from Jim, John, Jack, and Jerry. Why am I so gung ho in just to believe him? Or believe her. I have a really good, like you said, I've worked with my OBGYN for a long time. So her and we vibe pretty well. She can be straight up with me. That's why I chose her, and I can be straight up with her. But at the end of the day, she knows that if I'm confident about something, she'll call in extra testing and vice versa. And she knows that I have questions, I'm not going to back down. But it's not always been like that. I even have my middle child, she's run into some medical issues. And for the long time, I just kind of believed what the doctor said. It was like, okay, well, you're the expert. And now I'm like, somebody could come in and be like, oh, well, um, you know, they told me for a long time there was a doctor who said, We think it's behavioral. It's behavioral. It's behavioral." And I'm like, okay, well, you've met my child for 5 minutes. You don't know anything about her. And I can tell you right now, it's not behavioral because I live with her every day, day in and day out. And I've actually gotten into like very aggressive conversations with like chief of surgeries and all of these things just to say, if you're not going to take the time to explain it to me, I'm not going to take the time to let you do anything, because it's your job and duty to not dismiss me and it's your job and duty to hear me out. Can we take a note? Like, you got a notepad? Go through and dive into this because I'm trusting you with my body, my life. I get one of those. I get one body and one life. So if you are distracted or having a bad day, you're human. I get that. Okay, good for you. I am also human. I can also have bad days, but if you're distracted and you brush me off and then something happens to me, I don't get a do-over. So you have to fight and advocate for yourself in a sense of if you feel different, and I'm like you after the first one, they said, "Oh, it's going to be like a heavy period." No, sure it's not. I don't remember bleeding to death every single month laying in my floor like if I did that every month, I would probably be deceased. It was an astronomical amount of blood. It was painful. It was contractions. It was all of these things. And go home. Go home and do it. If you don't have a good support system and you're waiting for something to pass from your body and you're sick and you don't feel well and there's astronomical amount of blood, what else is that besides a trauma? There's no other word to talk about it. I don't particularly love to hang out in the trauma mode. So, like, what can we do as women to advocate for ourselves so we don't have that experience or to pass along to you when I say, hey, friend, this is what it's like. I don't know if you're going to like this. Here's your other options. When I have to present it to a friend before their OBGYN does, that feels like a problem to me because it's just not talked about enough. And like I said, I only get one life. So if you screw it up and it's not my fault, I don't get to come back and do it again. So I have to be my own advocate and I have to be advocate for my kids. And God forbid something happens to my husband, I have to be an advocate for him. Like you have to stand up to, you're just standing up to another human. Doctors are so smart and I'm so gracious for them and I'm appreciative of them because there's been many who have kept me alive. But those are the ones that sat down and took the time to listen. They're not just someone who dismisses it under the rug, per se.
That's a really like finding the ones that aren't going to dismiss it because when you're and I've seen it when you're a kid you get told you go to the doctors because the doctors have the answers. So you get conditioned to go, okay, cool. Well, the doctors have the answers. Through my fertility journey and looking back over it now, I'm like, not once did they actually do what I needed them to do. They were telling me to they like, yep, sure, you can try to conceive, but internally my health was not the way that it should have been to be able to hold a healthy pregnancy. Now I wish there was more that they did or looked at to be able to fall pregnant healthily. And again, like when I was going through my miscarriage, I was like, I listened. I was like, okay, cool. It's going to be like, well, not cool, but I'm going to go home and it's going to be like a heavy period. Like I'm sure I can handle that. I get heavy periods like all the time to the point of telling my husband, do not go in the bathroom because I don't have the energy to clean up after myself. There's blood everywhere. Laying on the floor with my feet up on the bed because I was passing out and calling my mum and telling her I was going to die. I could only imagine what it would be like on the other side of that phone call, like for my mum to be receiving like, because I was convinced. I'm like, no one can bleed like this and survive. And like you said, there's no way that you can do that monthly for a heavy period and be alive still. So why don't the doctors tell you that? This could be worst case scenario. If this happens, make sure that you seek medical help. Because I'm laying in the bed going, okay, I'll just, see this out. And it ended up being a lot worse because I listened to the doctors. I didn't listen to me. I didn't listen to the fact that this was not normal and it didn't feel normal. But because we are so conditioned to go, okay, to almost take the doctor's word as gospel that maybe this is normal until I got into the ambulance. And the ambulance officer said, why didn't you call sooner? And I was like, well, because I thought that I thought I was doing the right thing. I mean, and like you said too, I was experiencing contractions. There wasn't even any mention of that at all to me. And I have epilepsy, so I can't take strong medication at home. Like there's a lot of that I can't take. So I was very limited for the pain relief that I could take at home. So nothing that I had was actually touching the pain that I was in. And I didn't even know what it was until I was at the hospital. And the OBGYN that they called in said that I was experiencing contractions. And I was like, what? And so I believe that there should be some element of talking that through. Don't just sugarcoat it. Don't just downplay how big it could be at home. And I think this is why I was so set on voicing this, because it wasn't just my experience. Every woman, not every woman, but a lot of women I've spoken to, it has been far beyond what the doctors had mentioned they would experience. Today's episode is a part 1 of a part 2 series. And make sure that you do listen in to part 2 when it becomes available as well. Thank you for listening in with me today. I hope you found this episode helpful. If you did, I would absolutely love to hear from you. Take a screenshot of this episode, share it to social media, and tag me at Institute of Healing _PL. I love seeing what is resonating with you right now. If you want to chat further, I invite you to connect with me through Instagram. Head over and follow my Instagram account, send me a DM, and let's open the communication. If you want to know more about how you can be the support for others, head to the show notes and fill out the application form for the Pregnancy Loss Practitioner certification. I want to also note here that what I share within the episodes is not medical advice. If you need further support, please consult your doctor. Thank you again. Much love to you. Be gentle with yourself, and I look forward to supporting you on the next episode.